Chairman Schweikert, Ranking Member Sewell, members of the committee, you honor NTU and taxpayers everywhere by holding this hearing. As you know, NTU has had a long history of involvement in the tax administration space. We thank you, Mr. Chairman, for kicking off the Taxpayers First event that we held last year. That was fantastic. Our Taxpayer Defense Center continues to be very active in precedential litigation, but I'd like to focus on a couple of points here. Surprise, the IRS needs more money. It needed more prior to the Inflation Reduction Act, and if the IRA money for IRS is zeroed, we will have to scale up from there. However, point two, the IRS must prioritize any additional funding it receives toward taxpayer services and modernization. Three, Congress, the IRS, and Treasury must develop a genuine, detailed strategic plan for that modernization with transparent benchmarks and accountability safeguards if those benchmarks aren't achieved. And four, the damaged system of IRS oversight needs to be repaired so that Congress has more partners in ensuring the funding is properly spent. Now, there are lots of illustrations over the history of IRS modernization that I can go into. Hopefully we will when we get more technical in the Q&A period. But I'd like to point out two comparison and contrasts here. The IRS Restructuring and Reform Act of 1998, that was the product of 2 years of commission work, hundreds of testimonies, multiple committee hearings, and a 184-page bill. Set up that tripartite system of IRS oversight that ensured, for a few years at least, the service was actually transforming, meeting the objectives of its strategic plan. That system began to weaken, which I'll discuss a bit later, but that was generally a success. Contrast this with the Inflation Reduction Act, which took all of 9 paragraphs to describe an agency transformation, 3 paragraphs to describe how 99% of the funds would be spent. This was not a real transformation. It was an attempt to meet a score in the Inflation Reduction Act. That's what the funding was really intended for, and unfortunately, the strategic planning, the resulting strategic operational plan, and now the implementation roadmap, well, those came long after the money was let out the door, and it shows. It's folly to think that as we discuss estimates ranging from $180.4 billion to $316 billion for the collections the agency could get from the IRA funding, when, again, we were trying to meet a score, not modernize. We need to move forward with the real modernization here. And again, it's going to take money. There's no apparent project in the implementation roadmap for modernizing the individual master file or the business master file. Customer service priorities are starting to lag. These are a few reasons why our evaluation of the IRS's report card of IRA funds earned an overall D grade, and I'd be happy to explain further as to why that grade was given, but I'll just recommend here we need to restore the strength of that tripartite accountability system I mentioned going forward. If modernization is going to succeed, we have to have more itemized spending plans for the IRS going forward beyond the 100-odd page budget justification that members of Congress see. We have to have more detailed real-time data on service levels in the IRS. That will help us figure out where we need to shift personnel and how we can better use technologies like AI. And we have to measure the fiscal benefits of modernization and customer service on compliance. Several witnesses here can talk in greater detail about that as well as myself. But let me close this oral presentation with an important and inspiring quote. Even in the most difficult times, we can come together as a nation, as a people, and as a Congress to accomplish important things for the American people. That was said 5.5 years ago by the late, great John Lewis. who many of you know from this panel. History can repeat itself. It wasn't that long ago when you worked together to produce that legislation. Let's do it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sepp. Mr. Ladru.